Well, good morning. You guys look refreshed like you just came out of the outside that didn't have any humidity, huh? Isn't that awesome? We just don't get weather like this very often in Kentucky, and it's a blessing. Zach, it makes you want to go out and clean out a fence row, doesn't it? Just about, okay? It takes a lot for me to want to go out and clean a fence row, so it has to be pretty good to do that. We're glad that you're here. Glad that everybody is here. We know that there's some folks that are out on vacation, and that's fine. It's Labor Day weekend, so a lot of folks are visiting family. A lot of family reunions take place this year. I want to say hello to those that are watching on YouTube, listening to the podcast. If you miss any of this series, or any of our series, by the way, it's always out there on the internet forever and ever and ever, and you can always catch that. It even reaches all the way to Sarasota, Florida, by the way. There, it goes all the way down. The internet's worldwide, so we're glad that you guys are here and you can keep up with us in a lot of different ways. This morning we're going to turn a corner. A few weeks ago, back in July, at the end of July, Pastor Josh started us in this series of the purpose-driven church, and we're kind of going back and examining our DNA. See, Living Faith is really a young church, and it's when you compare it to other churches that have been kind of established for 200 years in Kentucky, and this church is less than 20 years old. It's kind of amazing how far it's come, how quick it's come. But for any age church, it's always important to go back and re-examine how you came to be and what's in your founding principles and who you are, to remind yourself of those things. And this church was designed and put together and kind of shaped as a purpose-driven church, and it's kind of defined through those purposes that Rick Warren used to establish Saddleback, and of course all of those things come from the book of Acts. And when you look at who we are as Living Faith, this is our mission statement. We are to be growing and going and glorifying. In the last few weeks, we've talked about how we grow. And you guys really do a good job of that, okay? You really do. We've got a great Sunday school program here at Living Faith. We have a great growing academy. If you weren't here Wednesday and didn't get to sign up for a class before you leave today, make sure you run over to the fellowship hall and sign up for a class. If you don't have time for that, just come on Wednesday night. We're starting this week, and we would love to have you take a class in our growing academy for this next 7-week session. We do a great job with that. It's called discipleship, okay? And you guys, you really do. As far as the percentage of people who come to Living Faith and the percentage of you guys that are actually plugged into a Sunday school class or plugged into a growing academy class, that percentage is really high when we compare that to other churches, and we consider that a really strong area. But today we turn a corner, and we're going to go to the next G, and that's going. And this may be an area that we, including myself, need to work on, okay? Because that's not my strong place. All right, I'm a disciple guy. I'm a teacher. It's what I do for a living, okay? I'm a teacher, and I've been accused before of being a teacher and not a preacher because it's what I do. I'm wired that way, and so I like classes, and I like growing, and I like exploring, and I like learning. It's what I like to do. But sometimes we get a little uncomfortable when someone asks us to go. And it's kind of multifaceted. It comes in servant and evangelism. Service and evangelism are the two areas of going, and we're going to get to evangelism, but today we're going to begin with service, really exploring ourselves and exploring our heart as to what kind of a servant's heart we have, all right? What kind of a servant's heart we have. And today, asking the question, how do real servants act? How do real servants act? A few weeks ago in our Follow Me series, we talked about this passage of Scripture, and so I want to go back to this. It's found in Mark chapter 10, and in verse 43 is kind of the centerpiece for it, but we want to go back and look at this whole thing again, because in this place, Jesus calls them all together. He calls his guys together, and he says, you guys know that those that are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. What he's saying is, you guys know how the world works, right? Okay? You guys understand how the world works, that you got a guy in charge, and then under that person in charge, you got somebody down here, and then there's somebody down here, and there's this chain of command, and that's the way it works, and so everybody kind of wants to be the guy. Okay, everybody wants to kind of be the person up here on top that kind of puts the orders down on everybody else. He said, you understand how the world works. But then he looks at them and he says, it's not so with you. You guys understand how the world works, but it's not so with you because we're not of the world. Okay, it's not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must become your servant. And then he goes on in verse 44 and says, whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. Wants to be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. In Matthew chapter 7 and verse 16, he tells us that we will know who we are by our fruit. By their fruit you will recognize them. By their fruit you will recognize them. And when you do what you're supposed to do, you will produce fruit. And here's the thing. I've had a lot of people in my ministry, and bless their heart, sometimes, I've seen them not do a thing. And then they're like, I am so thankful that I got to come out and serve God today. And I'm like, by doing what? Okay? By what did you do? Because you serve God by serving other people. Okay? So it's by your fruit that we will know who you are. Okay? It's by your fruit. It's by the other things. It's not that what you did just for Him. Okay? Now we just participated in a time of beautifully led worship. That's what we give back to God. Okay? That's glorifying, and we're going to get to that. And you should do that. And I hope you engaged in that, because that is your opportunity. And Brandy, I love the way you said that. It's very small what we can do just to give back to what He's done for us. It's so small, but yet that's what we have. But when we serve God, okay, that's worshiping. When we serve God by serving each other. It's different, okay? You're not serving Him by worshiping Him. You worship Him because He deserves it. He is worthy to be praised and worshiped, okay? So we worship God. But when we serve God, we do that by serving other people. The world defines greatness in terms of power, in terms of professions and prestige and position. When you can demand service from others, okay? When you can demand service from others, you have arrived. Okay, you have come on the scene. When you can pick up a phone and somebody says, oh, they've called, I must go right now. Okay, when you can demand other people, and people, when you talk, they listen. Okay, you remember that from way back when. When you talk, people listen, and they show up on your doorstep, and they do whatever you call them to do. It's a self-serving culture. It's a me-first mentality. And acting like a servant is not very popular in our culture. It's not very popular in our culture. Jesus, however, measured greatness in terms of service and not status. And we will be wise to remember that. God determines your greatness by how many people you serve and not how many people serve you. He flipped it upside down. It's so contrary to the world's idea of greatness, and we have a hard time understanding it. We have a hard time getting our head wrapped around it, much less practicing it and making sense of it. The disciples even struggled with it. How many times do we see in the Gospels where he gives they give their own account? Okay, that's why the disciples and the writings that we have, the Gospel of Christ, is so unbelievably believable. Because if you were writing that, if you were making that stuff up, you wouldn't make yourself look so goofy. But they told the truth. Because they wanted to go back and say, yeah, when He was here, we were walking along with Him and going, hey, how are we going to be in the top chair? How are we going to get? It's like, hey, Jesus, come over here. Let's talk. Hey, we know we can't be you, but we want to be like little you. We want to have we know that you're kind of in charge, but if you'll put us in charge under you, then that'll be less for you to do, and then we can lord over people. That's what we want to do. And He had to go, oh my gosh, guys, you got it all mixed up. It's upside down. It's upside down from what you're thinking. And we still do it today. Thousands of books. You go on Amazon, Google leadership, you'll find lots of ideas. You'll find lots of books. Go in there and Google servanthood. See how many you find. On how many books on servanthood have been written compared to leadership. Everybody wants to lead. Nobody wants to be a servant. We'd rather be generals than privates. Okay? We'd rather be generals than privates, and nobody wants to do those kinds of things. Even Christians want to be servant leaders. But Jesus called Himself a servant. And this is what happens. God often tests our hearts. He tests our hearts by asking us to serve in ways that we are uncomfortable with. In September of 1996, I went to my pastor, Greg Fields, and I said, I feel like God's calling me to preach. And he's like, oh, this will be fun. Okay, cool. That's great. And so the next Sunday, he said, you're on. He said, you think he's called you to preach? And next Sunday, it's you. I was like, great, And I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to write sermons, preach to people. And so I came in next Sunday, and I got up, and I preached my sermon. And then he come back, and he said, okay, here's your next assignment. I said, okay, what's that? He said, we got nursing home service over at Lakeview in Morgantown. I need you to go preach that service. I can't be there. And I'm like, oh, man, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go over there. Okay, I don't want to, babies crying don't bother me. But listen, if you've never preached a service in a nursing home, you have never been in the most distracting environment in your life, okay? Especially Lakeview. My goodness. We always did the service over there in the lobby right after lunch. And so and there's a buzzer on their door, so it's like me, and then people, they try to get out of their chairs, and the alarms go off, and there's people crying, and people asking for help, and just this buzz of thing, and I'm sitting up there trying to preach, and it's like, this is awful, and I just didn't want to do it, and I didn't want to go, and I went over there, and I got through it, but this is what I realized. It really didn't matter what I said. I don't know how many times I went over there in the course of my ministry in Butler County. I pretty much took the same sermon every time I went because it really didn't matter what I said. It was the 20 or 30 minutes that I spent afterwards, sitting beside them, putting an arm around them, hugging those folks, and loving on them. And God said, I got to get you out of your comfort zone because this is not where you want to preach, but you got to understand what these folks really need. And if I don't get you over here, you're not going to get it. So here you are. Sometimes he will make us uncomfortable. If you see a guy fall into a ditch, God expects you to help him out. Okay? He doesn't expect you, when you're driving down the road and somebody has an accident or you come up on the scene of something, he doesn't expect you to pull over and say, it's kind of like that commercial that I don't fix things, I just tell you when things are broken, okay? He doesn't expect you to pull over and say, hey, you've had an accident and you need help. See ya. I'm not an EMT, a paramedic, a doctor, and I don't have an ambulance, so I got nothing for you. I'm sorry, I'm out. No. He expects you to do what you can with what you have where you are, right there in that place for that person that's in front of you. Even though you may not be comfortable with it. Okay, listen, I've been called to some places that I didn't want to go. I have come up on some things, and some of you guys have too. I've received those phone calls that, hey, so-and-so's had a wreck. We're here by ourselves. We need you. You're close. Okay, I'm there. And I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not an expert in extraction of vehicles or people or any of that. But you just go and do. God will put you in places sometimes, and he doesn't expect you to be a professional. See, all of you have a gifting, okay? You're shaped by God. That's a whole piece that we could spend hours on, days on, weeks on. But you're shaped for a purpose. You have a purpose. You have a ministry. You have something that you need to be doing, and you're gifted for that, and you're equipped for that, and that's what you should be doing. But that's not all you do. Okay? That is not all you can do in the kingdom of God. That is not all that you can do for the service of God. Sometimes you are called to do what is going on right in front of you. And you may not be particularly good at it. And you may not be particularly gifted at it. But that's what's going on in front of you. And he needs you to step up to the plate and do what you can. There is no special talent or gift required to stay after a meeting and pick up trash or stack chairs. Okay? But we need people to do that. We need people to do that. Anybody can be a servant. What it requires is a servant's character. It is possible to serve in church for a lifetime without ever being a servant. You have to have a servant's heart. So ask yourself that question, how do I know? How do I know if I have the heart of a servant? First of all, servants don't fill up their time with other pursuits that could limit their availability. And only you know this about your life. Well, that doesn't mean that you can't enjoy anything or you can't go anywhere or you can't have a hobby or you can't do. But listen, we are all busy, okay? In this culture, we're busier than we've ever been, okay? And a lot of times we're busy here, okay? I see this a lot. This is where I'm busy. Okay, yeah, I get it. I'm busy too. But you can't fill your calendar to the point where you can't be available to God at all. You have to be ready to jump into service when you're called on. You see, the first thing we want to look at is that real servants do what's needed, even when it's inconvenient. It brings us a question. Are you available to God when He needs you? Are you available to God when He needs you? They do what's needed. Can He mess up your plans without you becoming resentful? That's hard. That's hard. I've been there. We've been right in the middle of something or getting ready to go do something, or we had this mapped out or whatever, and the phone rings. We need you. And God's saying, I need you to do this. And you're thinking, oh, that's tough. As a servant, you don't get to pick and choose when or where you will serve. That's why you're a servant. Being a servant means giving up the right to control your schedule and allowing God to interrupt it. And that can be frustrating. Believe me, it can be frustrating. I've had those moments in ministry, okay? I've had those moments. Troy's called me and said, what are you going to do this weekend? I said, I'm going to go to the church and sit in a chair with the phone in my hand. He's like, what are you talking about? I said, it's just there's so much going on. I just expect to be called out at any moment. So that's just what I'm going to do. I'm just not even going to try to do anything else, okay? And that's frustration sometimes because that's the way it happens. But we have to train ourselves to be available to God when He calls us. When He calls us. And being willing to do that. Because this is what happens. This is the way we really should look at that. And instead of looking at it as frustrating, instead of looking at it as interrupting, instead of looking at it that way, we have to look at that as being a divine appointment for ministry. That someone chose you. That someone chose me in their time of need. That they called me. That they picked me. That's humbling. Okay? That's humbling. Sometimes it's small, and sometimes it's huge. Okay? Sometimes it's huge. And there's those phone calls that stick out in my mind in 20 years of ministry when I've answered that call and somebody has said, hey, so what's going on? This is what's happened. They've had a wreck. They're at the hospital. Okay? Or they found so-and-so. And we need you. That you put yourself in a position, because if you don't put yourself in a position, then the thought process won't be such that they're going to call you. The thought process will be, well, they won't answer. The thought process is, well, they're too busy. The thought process becomes, well, they're not going to be available. When you make yourself available, then God can use you. Because real servants pay attention to the needs of other people. When you see a need, you seize the moment. Galatians chapter 6, verse 10 says, therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. When God puts someone in need right in front of you, He is giving you an opportunity to grow in servanthood. When He gives you that opportunity right in front of you, He's giving you the opportunity to grow in servanthood. And here's the thing that He says, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. That's your brothers and sisters in Christ, folks. That's the church. That's our family here at Living Faith. When folks in our family here at Living Faith need help, when our folks here at Living Faith need our assistance, it's to be on the top of the priority list, not the bottom. Okay, especially those who belong to the family of believers. We miss occasions sometimes for serving because we lack sensitivity and spontaneity. Sometimes opportunities to serve never last very long. They'll pass very quickly, and they'll never return again. And when we get those moments, when we get those things, and I've had them, and believe me, it frustrates you. Okay, it sticks with you. Because I look back, and over 20 years, there's been a lot, and I'll look back, and I'll be like, I missed that opportunity. I missed it. The window was only open for a moment, and I was too busy or too distracted or something was going on, and I missed it. And sometimes you don't get that back. You don't get that back. Take advantage of the moment. John Wesley has some great words, and I think they put this together. Yeah, there it is. This is great. It says, do all the good you can by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as you ever can. That's good stuff, okay? That is good stuff. And it's something to hang on to, because this is what you got to remember about that. God is watching. The world will probably not pay attention, but God is watching. He's always watching. Real servants do their best with what they have. Real servants do their best with what they have, and servants don't make excuses, procrastinate, and wait for better circumstances, okay? This is, this is the thing. When the time is right, or when this gets okay, and then we're going to do that, and all these things. And I remember talking about that when I was been teaching for 2 or 3 years, and we were talking about having kids. And I was telling one of my co-teachers, and old Mark Gary, taught in the back hallway with us there, Janice, and I was telling Mark, and I said, when we get this, and we do this, and all this stuff, and he stopped me mid-sentence. He said, if you're going to wait till you get everything perfect before you have a kid, you'll never have kids. I said, huh? He said, I'm just telling you. He said, if you wait till everything is perfect, you'll never do it. He said, because that's not the way life works. And he was right. And when you've got a situation that you see in front of you, if you start thinking, well, I need to get this in line, and I need to get this put together, and in order to do this, I've got to have that, and I've got to do all these things and all this stuff, and it's like, it's not going to work. God expects you to do what you can with what you have where you are, period. Okay? He expects you to do what you can with what you have where you are. Less than perfect service is always better than good intention. Okay? Now here's the thing. You've always been taught, and I've been taught, if you can't do it right, there's no sense doing it at all. Okay? I get that, but that's not what Jesus said. Okay? That's what Grandpa said, and there's some good advice in that, and don't just do things sloppy that are going to fall apart. You can hang on to that, but if you're not going to do anything, do something. Okay? When it comes to meeting needs of other people, when you have people in front of you that have needs, when it comes to meeting those needs and serving other people, do something. Okay? Do something. We have a motto on our farm. The cows don't care. Okay? The cows don't care. If I wait until the tractor is clean and the tires are clean and the oil is changed and the fuel filters are changed and I'm dressed in perfect Carhartt and a cowboy hat to feed them hay, they'll never get fed, okay? Because I never wear a cowboy hat on the farm, okay? They'll never get fed. But you know what? The cows don't care. The cows don't care if the tires are muddy. The cows don't care what I wear. The cows don't care as long as they get hay, all right? You just feed them, all right? You just feed them. And so sometimes you just got to get out there and do it. You just got to get out there and do it. You just, whatever the need is, whatever's in front of you at the time. And that's, there's a reason that people never serve, is that they fear they're not good enough, that they just can't get it all together. A lot of things that we start doing, we may do poorly. We've kind of adopted this little theme around here, and I think I kind of brought that to Living Faith, is that we're gonna jump out of the airplane, and we're gonna build the parachute on the way down, okay? I work really good under pressure, all right? I had a teacher tell me that one time. I was doing prom, and I was up all night, and everything was crazy, and it's like, there's no way this is gonna get done, and we were decorating all this stuff, and then on Friday, it's done. And I'm sitting there exhausted, not having any sleep and everything else. And he come in, he looked at me, and said, you know what? You do your best work under intense pressure, don't you? I said, it seems that way. I said, I don't necessarily like that, but when it has to be done, it has to be done. And we'll just take what we've got and do it. We just got to get it done. And that's what happens. Sometimes if you just wait for everything to line up and the stars to be perfect and the weather to be great and everything's good, you just won't get done. You just won't get done. And God says it needs to be done. So just jump in. Next, real servants do every task with equal dedication. Every task with equal dedication. Colossians 3:23 points us in this direction. It says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord and not for human masters. Whatever it is, whether it's big or whether it's small, work at it, okay? Work at it with all of your heart, because real servants do every task with equal dedication, whatever it is. The only issue is, does it need to be done? That's another thing we say on our farm. It all has to be done. It all has to be done, so we might as well start somewhere, okay? It all has to be done. And so if it needs to be done, that's the only thing you need to know. Does it need to be done? Yes. Let's do it. Let's just do it. You will never arrive at a place in life where you are too important for menial task, okay? God will never exempt you from the mundane. It is a vital part of character curriculum. When I walked away from my full-time job in radio, and I've told you about this, to go to college, to leave that and to go to college, I remember the environment that I worked in. The radio station that's on Frederica Street in Owensboro, where BKR is located, was a brand new facility. They built it while I was actually the last dude to broadcast out of the old building, and we moved the station one Sunday night when nobody knew. We moved it across the road and finished one song on one side of the parking lot and started another one. It was seamless. Nobody even heard it. And I was the guy, me and the engineer was there by ourselves when we moved over. And so we were in this brand new facility. It was amazing, okay? Everything was nice and plush and brand new chairs and climate control environment. And the heaviest thing I ever had to pick up was a CD. And man, it was nice, you know? This was nice work. And I remember I left that job and I went to Bowling Green. and I applied at every radio station in the Bowling Green area. Okay, every one of them. I knocked on every door, went in, talked to every program director, and took them my resume, and I even went to Troy Richards at WCVK. And he sent me a picture this week of this guy, and he's standing in a studio. And I texted him back. I said, what studio is that? He said, well, that's WCVK. I said, you hired him over me? And he's like, and then he called me the next day. But anyway, I tried every place, okay? I tried every station, nothing. And so I'm like, oh my gosh. And it was at that time in our life where Dad had been laid off at the mines, and I was trying to go to college, and so it was kind of tough at home, and because he was looking for a job, and I was starting there, and I needed a job. And so out of the blue, my friend called me that we were in FFA together, and he said, hey, you're coming to Bowling Green. I said, yeah. He said, do you need a job? And I said, I do need a job. And he said, well, I've got one for you. He said, I'm leaving my job, taking another job. And he said, I told my boss that you're his guy. And I was like, okay. He said, he wants you to come in and talk to him. So it was at Case Power and Equipment in Bowling Green on Lover's Lane. So I knew tractors and dozers and those kind of things. And so I went over, and it was in the service department. So I went back, and Mr. Mack was the service manager, and he said, this guy says that you're my guy. And I said, if that's what he says. He said, well, that's all I need to know. He said, he did a good job. I expect you to do a good job. You start tomorrow. And I was like, great. So it was at the end of it was in May. And so we were getting started for the summer, and man, I'm going to tell you what, the first day I went in that job, I come in, he said, okay, here's what you're going to be doing. He said, you see all these 55-gallon barrels around the shop? I said, yes, sir. He said, the mechanics fill those things full of parts and boxes and oil and all kinds of crazy stuff. He said, you got to keep those cans clean all the time, keep them emptied. I was like, okay, 55-gallon barrels, they're heavy. Got you. And he said, underneath all of the machines, he said, whenever we take a machine out, he said, oil dry and clean those up. And I was like, okay, it's not too bad. I said, that's, quite a bit. And he said, here's the main thing. And so then he takes me out in the back parking lot, and there's a big concrete pad out in the back parking lot. And he said, you see that 2.5-inch fire hose over there? Yes, sir. He said, you use that to keep the parking lot clean. After you do this, and he said, you see all those dozers that are lined up out there? I said, yes, sir. He said, one by one, he said, you bring the dozers up. And he said, those are all here for track changes and parts and chains and rollers. And he said, but they're all caked full of this Warren County red clay. All right, all of them. He said, so that sledgehammer and that pickaxe and that steam jenny, pressure washer, and that fire hose, he said, those are your tools of destruction. You clean those tracks out and keep them clean for the mechanics, and then you roll them in the shop, and they'll make the repairs. You clean up the spots, you dump the cans. And I'm like, I'm with you, I got it. He said, all right. He said, you're on. And so for that summer, that's what I did. I mean, it was 100 degrees. I'm out there on the concrete. I've got a sledgehammer, and I'm beating those tracks and busting that clay out, washing it with fire hoses, sweat pouring off of me day in, day out. And I'm sitting there going, what have I done? What have I done? What have my environment was so much nicer. And I'll never forget one day. I went in, and I was filling up. I was exhausted. And I sat down in Mac's chair behind his desk and was filling out my time card. And he come in and put his hands on it. He's a Navy guy, Navy retired chief of a submarine, okay? And so Mike puts his hands on his hips, and he looks at me, and I'm sitting in his chair, and he says, "Get your greasy self out of my chair." And I'm like, and he just, and that in that moment, I was like, you're right, I'm greasy and nasty, and I'm in your chair. So I got up and moved. But I was thinking, you know, I used to be able to sit in chairs like this, but now I'm not good enough. I'm not clean enough. I can't do this. But I kept doing it. Whole summer long. Just 3 months. Well, I expected to continue to do that job as long as I could in college. That's what I expected to do. Right before school started, he knew school started on Monday. It was Friday afternoon. I'd spent the whole day cleaning and beating tracks. And he said, "Come in here a minute." When I got ready to clock out and I come in, he said, "Sit down." And he said, "Son, you've proven yourself." I said, "Okay." He said, "You've done a good job for me this summer." He said, "You've done everything I've asked." He said, "As a matter of fact," he said, "I told you one time at the beginning of the summer what I needed you to do, and you never once asked again." He said, "I never once had to come out and say, that trash can's full, empty it. I never come out and said, that dozer needs to have its tracks cleaned, go clean it." He said, "I never once had to come out and ask you to do anything else again." He said, "I just gave you the list of tasks that needed to be done once, and you spent the whole summer and did it." And I said, "Well, that's what you asked me to do." He said, "Okay." He said, "Well, that's good." He said, "From now on, you're going to be my boy." He said, "I'm going to take care of you because you've taken care of me." And he said, "There's a clock out there on the wall." And he said, "You can clock in anytime you want between 7:30 and 4:30. He said, "But school comes first." He said, "If you need to go to class, if you need to take a test, or you need to study for a test," he said, "that comes first." He said, "You know how much you can do and what you have to do." He said, "When you get done with that, I'll never question anytime between the hours that we're here, you can clock in and work." He said, "If there is no school, you can have all day long." He said, "It's up to you." He said, "But I'm going to hire somebody else to do what you've been doing out there." And he said, "I'm going to give you more to do." And I said, "Okay." The first day that I came in, when school started, I walked into his office and he handed me the truck keys to the service truck. And I said, "What's this for?" He said, "Well," he said, "we need you to go to Hopkinsville and pick up a load of oil." He said, "Takes about," he said, it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I said, "Well, I'll be back." And he said, "Be back at 4:30. I said, "I can be back before." He said, "Be back at 4:30. All right?" I said, "Yes, sir." So I left, went and got the load of oil, came back. And he took care of me for 3 years. The whole time that I worked there, he took care of me. And he didn't have to do that. But this was the thing, and this is what I learned from that. Because I didn't complain, and because I didn't come and say this job is too beneath me, okay? I'm too good. I've already been in other places doing other jobs, and I'm just too good to clean your trash cans. I'm too good to clean out your dozer. I'm too good to clean up after these guys. Because of that, he gave me more. He gave me more. The next summer, he went on vacation. He said, "Guess what?" I said, "What?" He said, "You're in charge." I said, "Oh, this is not going to be good." He said, "I'm serious, you got it." He said, "You run this place." He said, "You know what you're doing." I said, "But there's other people that have been." He said, "You're it." He said, "You're the man." And Ben, I don't envy your job, okay? Because I run the service department for 3 weeks in 3 years, and I know what it's like to sit behind that phone and listen to those customers and do those things. But he gave me those opportunities because I didn't complain, and because I didn't think that I was too good for those tasks. That was my character building time. It took me years to recognize that, okay? It took me years to recognize that. And that's something that I struggle with in the classroom now. And we struggle with that with young people sometimes. Because when we give them a menial task, they look and say, "I'm too good for that." Be careful. Be careful. Be careful. Jesus specialized in menial tasks that everyone else tried to avoid. He washed feet. He helped kids. He fixed breakfast. And he served lepers. There was nothing that was beneath him because he came to serve. It wasn't in spite of his greatness that he did those things, but it was because of it. It was because of it. And he expects us to follow. Small tasks show a big heart, and your servant's heart is revealed in the little things that others don't think of doing. No task is beneath you when you have a servant's heart. Great opportunities will often disguise themselves in small tasks. It's the little things in life that determine the big things. So don't go out looking for great big things to do for God. Don't be looking for those things, okay? Just do the not so great stuff. Just do the not so great stuff. And God will assign you whatever He wants you to do. But before attempting the extraordinary, try serving in ordinary ways. I think back, and there's not anything that I could have done that summer that would have grown my character more than what God had me do. That's why every place that I knocked on their door, there was no opportunity, because God was directing me to exactly where He wanted me, to test me. There's always more people that are willing to do the great things for God than there are people to do the little things. The race to be a leader is always crowded, but the field is wide open for those who want to be servants. Sometimes you serve upward in those in authority, and sometimes you serve downward to those that are in need. But either way, you will develop a servant's heart when you're willing to do whatever is needed. Makes a difference. Next is real servants are faithful to their ministry. And we're going to pick up the pace here. Servants finish their task, fulfill their responsibilities. They keep their promises. They complete their commitments. This is an area in living faith that we need to work on. Okay? It's an area of living faith that we need to work on. When we say, I'll do that, we need to do that. Okay? It's important. It's important. When we say, I'm committed to that, I'm going to be there, I'm going to do that, it is important that we follow through. Servants don't leave jobs half undone. They don't quit when they get discouraged. They're trustworthy and dependable. People that we can count on. Faithfulness has always been a rare quality. It's a thing in our society that we have a hard time with. People don't understand the meaning of commitment. They don't understand the meaning of commitment. And we make commitments casual. Oh, yeah, I got you. I'll be there. I'm with you. I'm all over that. I'm all over that. And then whatever it takes. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't be there. I told you I would, but I can't. That's, that don't cut it. Okay, when you say I'll be there and I'm going to commit to this, you need to mean that. It means to mean something. Okay? It needs to mean something. Because when you start down that road, it begins to fall apart. Particularly when there's no hesitation, remorse, or regret. It blows me away when I watch kids. I never understood this concept of calling in. I see kids do it all the time. It's like, I'm just going to call in. And I'm like, call in? What do you mean call in? I never called in. I drug myself to work when I drove, I made $3 an hour. And I worked in Owensboro, and if it was snow or whatever, it's like, I got to be there. I got to go, I had to be at the radio station in Hartford. I made $2.85 an hour there. I had to be there at 5:30 in the morning, okay? 5:30 a.m. on Sunday morning after Saturday night, okay? That you'd say, hey, I can't be there. Sorry, I can't do 5:30 a.m. for $2. Oh, yeah, I was always there, early. You have to learn commitment. When we say I'm going to come, I'm going to be there. I'm going to do that. It's really sad when churches and organizations and things here, we have to improvise or come up with something because volunteers don't prepare or don't show up or didn't even tell us that they were not going to be there. Even though you're just a volunteer, okay? Maybe you're not paid staff, but when you commit to something that is a work of the church, it's important. It's an important commitment that we need to follow through with. Can you be counted on by other people? It's a question. Can you be counted on by others? Are there promises that you need to keep, vows you need to fulfill, commitments you need to honor? Because here's the thing. It's a test. God is testing your faithfulness. When He gets in your head, when he directs your path, when you see something, when something comes up and you say, I need to do that. He says, okay, you've recognized that. Now what are you going to do about that? I'm going to commit to it, okay? You've committed to it. Now are you going to keep your commitment? Because that's a sign of faithfulness. It's a sign of faithfulness when you say, okay, I've been, and now I'm going to follow through. And here's the thing. God has promised to reward your faithfulness in eternity. And you don't know when that's coming, okay? You see, when I took that job at Case, Mac didn't go out in the shop and say, this is your job. And if you'll do this for 3 months, I'm going to reward you with an easier job and a more flexible job. And if you'll be faithful with little, then I'm going to put you in charge of more. He didn't tell me that. All he said is, this, and this needs to be done. And as far as you know, you're going to do that for the rest of your days here until you get a degree and a better job. This is all you got. Thank you. Okay? I didn't know what was coming. I didn't know that, but here's the thing that I can assure you. If you will do what God asks you to do, there is a day coming. There is a reward coming. It's a promise, okay? Because what he did for me was a little picture. God just gave me a little picture, because literally what Mac McIntyre did for me that day in his office at Case Power and Equipment was say, well done, good and faithful servant. You've arrived. I'm going to give you now a reward. And this is a little small picture, just a little glimpse. But it's a promise to those who choose to serve the Lord. It's a promise that if you will serve him, one day you will sit at his feet. One day you will appear before his throne, and he will look at you and say, well done, welcome home. Faithful servants never retire. They never retire. I look forward to someday being able to change what I do, okay? I look forward to a more flexible schedule. I look forward to a lot of things. I call it retirement. There are people out there that give me hope, okay, that it may still be there for me. But I don't look for that so that I can say, well, I'm done. I'm just going to sit down and quit. I look at that and say, I can't wait so that I can do more, that I can go more and do more and be more and reach more. You see, because real servants never retire. They just change jobs. As long as you've got breath, God has purpose. As long as you have breath, God has purpose for you. Real servants, last thing, maintain a low profile. Listen, it's not about you. It's not about me either. Okay? It's not about you. It's not about me. It's all about him. And real servants maintain a low profile. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 5 says, in the same way, you who are younger, submit yourselves to your elders. All of you clothe yourselves with humility toward one another, because God opposes the proud but shows favor to the humble. Okay? Shows favor to the humble. Be humble. You won't find many real servants in the limelight. You won't find real servants in the limelight. You may be serving in obscurity in some small place, feeling unknown and unappreciated, but here's the thing. God puts you there for a purpose. And he knows you're there. Okay? He knows you. When you look and say, I can't believe I'm doing it. I know. Okay? I'm always touched by our special education department at the high school, by the kids that are there and the kids that you guys serve. Okay? And some of you all are in here that have done that and have done that for your lives. It touches me. Okay? Because God has wired you in such a way to care for those kids, and you don't get a whole lot of glory for that. There's not a whole lot of people who line up every morning and applaud you coming into our building to say thank you for all that you do for these children, for these kids that are suffering and going through all these different things and that they didn't ask for and had no way to respond to. Thank you. You don't get a whole lot of that, but I don't think you expect it. But understand something. He sees it. He knows it. He's watching. He's watching. He's watching. Okay? It's not about what the world says. Your ministry matters in the kingdom of God. And one day when Jesus shows up on this earth, you'll show up too. Okay? You'll show up too. Listen, there's over 750 halls of fame in this country, okay, where people run fast or dribble fast or pass fast or drive fast. But you won't find very many real servants in those places. Notoriety means nothing to real servants. It means nothing to real servants because they know the difference between prominence and significance. Okay? Those halls and those places, they proclaim prominence. But listen, to be a servant in the kingdom of God is the most significant thing that you can do. You have several prominent features on your body that you could live without. But it's the hidden parts of your body that are indispensable. And the same is true in the body of Christ. The most significant service in the kingdom of God is unseen. It's unseen. But in heaven, God is going to openly reward the most obscure and unknown servants. People that you never heard of before and didn't need to, because they were just doing what God called them to do in the place where He called them to be. People that we've never heard of, who taught these kids, cleaned up after them, who cared for the elderly, nursed AIDS patients, and thousands and thousands and thousands of unnoticed ways. And they all should know this. Don't be discouraged. Don't be discouraged when your service is unnoticed. Don't be discouraged when your service is taken for granted by people, because it does not go unnoticed by God. He's paying careful attention. He's paying careful attention. And what He has planned for you and what He has in a reward for you is beyond anything that I can verbally share with you. I can't show you, I can't tell you how good that is. It's beyond my comprehension. But just know that when we serve Him, the greatest words that we can ever hear, the greatest words that we can ever hear is, well done. Well done. Well done, thy good and faithful servant. Welcome home. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 58. It says, therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always, always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. Keep on, keeping on, and keep on serving Him. Let me pray for you. Father, I come before you this morning and I just thank you. I thank you for an opportunity to be in your presence. And Father, that you have given us so many countless opportunities to serve you. And we serve you by serving others. Father, help us to recognize the needs that are around us. And give us the willingness to do something. To do what we can with what we have right where we are. And Father, you know what we need to do with that. You know how we need to respond to that. You know how we need to reflect on that. You know what's in our hearts today. Father, I just pray this morning that you'll just touch us in a time of invitation and reflection. Help us respond to you. Maybe we need to say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I've got it all wrong. Got my priorities mixed up. It's more about me than it is about you. Maybe we just need to say, direct me, God. I'm not doing what you want me to do. I need you to show me. Or maybe we know what it is and we're just scared to death. We just need some courage this morning. Or maybe we just need you. Maybe we just need you. Maybe we're just hurting and we just tired of running. We just need you to put your arms around us and remind us that you died for us. You loved us. You still love us. And you just want us to come home. Father, you know how we need to respond. You know what's in our hearts. Just move us, Father, in a way that we would respond to you. We ask it, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. Would you please stand?